Late Night with Bridget. Our guest on the line is Phumelele Ndumo. Good evening, Phumelele.
Good evening, Thuli, and I would also like to greet the listeners.
Thank you. I'm sure did you hear Bridget there saying she's read your book?
Yes, she did. Now I'm recalling who she is. She invited me to address Miss S.A. at, what place was that, Bridget?
No, she's out of the studio now.
Oh, is she out? Yes.
Okay. So, Phumelele, taking a step back, who is Phumelele? Where did you grow up? And how did you end up being an author?
Okay. I grew up in KZN in Claremont. There's a township in Pinetown just outside Durban. I'm number 5 of 7 children. We're 7 children in my family.
Big family.
Yeah, big family, yes. So how did I end up being an author? I started working for banks. And I realized that we know so little about money. I knew absolutely nothing when I was buying my first home. And it occurred to me that if I don't understand the thing that I'm doing, what about an ordinary South African who has not studied anything in finance? There I was, a BCom graduate at the time, working for a bank, and I understood nothing about money. And I saw it was 1998. Crime in this country reached 24.5%. People were losing their homes. Homes were being repossessed. You know, it was scary. And people are coming to the bank and dropping the keys and say, we don't want your house anymore. It's become too expensive. As an internal auditor at the time working for a bank, I realized that we needed a lot of education. And that's how I started writing. Hence, my first book was all about how to buy a home and educate your children.
Yes.
Then through that book, I came to know that many people were heavily indebted. And that's how I then wrote the second book, From Debt to Riches, Steps to Financial Success.
All right. And what are some of the important lessons that you learned just during that first attempt to buy your first property?
One, I had no clue that they were, I understood that the house, the home I was buying had been transferred to my name. But I had no clue how much the costs were and what they were. And then what shocked me was it's not just one set of fees, the transfer cost, but it's also the registration fee. And as young as I was, I remember fed up walking to my GM, saying to him, why on earth am I paying so much? Why didn't anyone tell me? And I guess he understood because he just laughed at me and he sat me down and explained to me why I was paying all of these fees. So I learned that, I actually realized that our education system was actually not giving us the skills that we need for, our day-to-day life. Because in our time, most of us are going to buy homes, are going to buy cars, are going to have children and bring up children, and we need to save for their varsity education and all of those things. And yet we're not taught about those basics that we all will be going through in life.
Interesting. And how was your book, the first book, received, and then also the subsequent book, Debt to Riches?
The first book was self-published, and we sold over 3,000 copies. And out of that, I was then approached by Jacana Media. When they heard that, they said to me, how did you do it? I didn't realize that, selling 3,000 copies was a lot. So I said, I just put my books in the boot and somewhere at exclusive bookshop, and I talked about the book wherever I go, and that's it, and they said, do you want to write again? I said, yes, I would love to. They said, can we publish you? And the second book has 4,000 copies.
How many? Your line was just breaking there. How many copies?
Over 17,000.
Wow, okay.
Yes, we're approaching 18,000 copies as we speak. So I wrote the second book, and that was then published by Jacana Media.
All right. And now taking a step back, Phumelele, when you were growing up, how was money introduced to you, and what sort of relationship do you have with money now?
My dad used to own a shop. So in the evenings, we'll sit and we'll count the days, revenues, so to speak. And that's how I was introduced to money. And I remember at a young age, I was doing standard 2, now 4. And if my friend Pamela and I, we sort of said, let's not spend our pocket money. Let's make sandwiches at home and save our money. That whole year, we didn't spend our pocket money. I would give my pocket money. It wasn't a lot. Must have been 20 or 50 cents. And I would give it to Pamela, and she would give it to her grandma. Her grandma was putting all of these 20 cents and 10 cents underneath her kitchen plastic table mat. That last day of school that year, after we received our school report, we literally ran to Pamela's grandmother's house, and we sat there for quite some time. She took this table mat off the table, and there were all these 20 cents, 50 cents all over the place, and we counted them, and we divided them into 2. And she gave both of us plastic bags, and we took that money, and I went home. So that was the first lesson for me about saving.
And how much had you collected?
Oh, I don't remember. All I know it was the plastic was not full, but she gave us plastic bags and we put the money in there. And I ran to my mom very proud that I had all these savings, that I wanted a new dress. And I was proud of myself for having saved for the whole year. And to date, I'm still I'm not as much of a saver, but I am an investor. I really believe that, we need to invest for a better.
And maybe, Phumelele, can you explain the difference between savings and investing? Because it's something that people always tend to get confused.
Savings is really a short-term goal. You may be wanting to buy something in a year or saving for your child's school fees for 2017. A short-term goal. Maybe you want to change your sofas and you want to do that in cash. So you put money away. Typically, you'll use your bank account for that, Market Link or Money Market, 32-day notice account, as an example. That is a saving, short term. On the other end, investing, you are looking at least 5 years, and you'll use a unit trust or collective investment for that. There are ETFs, there are tax-free investments these days. Yes. So those are just some of the vehicles that you can use to invest money, and it's not short-term. I think that is a key thing. So you could be wanting to buy a car in 5 years' time, and you start now to invest for that, or for your old age, or for your children's varsity education, and you know that in 10 years' time, they'll be going to university, so you start now for that long-term goal.
My guest tonight is Phumelele Ndumo, who is an author. She wrote her first book about buying your first home after she had her own encounter and realized how little she knew about buying a home. And her second book, From Debt to Riches, has reached up to 17,000 copies. So she's doing very well. And it's been a pleasure just getting to know her a little bit better and her sharing her money lessons with us. Taking another step back, Phumelele, a question I ask all our guests for this inset. What was your first job and what did you do with your very first paycheck?
Oh, yeah. My first job, I got a bursary from Transnet while I was in university. So I had to go and serve them, and I was an internal auditor in training for Transnet. My first salary, I really struggled. I've been scared to remember what on earth I did. Honestly, I cannot remember.
It's fine.
Yes, I can't remember what I did with it. But I know that one of my very first goals was, and this was also, drummed into us by our father. My dad used to say, he was very proud of himself for having built our family home for us before we were even born. By the time we were born, we had a home. And he used to say to us, one day I'll be gone. And by then you must have an education, you must be independent. So I always wanted to buy a home as soon as possible. So I'm sure some of it must have gone into some savings account, to start working towards that goal.
Buying your first home. So, Phumelele, what are the good financial habits that you've developed over the years?
I think aside from investing, I'm really, really scared of debt. And it's also me understanding finance to say, debt is so costly, especially short-term unsecured debt. I look at people's budgets on almost a daily basis, and I will ask them, do you realize how much this personal loan is costing you? Over 30% in some instances. So, one thing I've really learned to do is to keep away from debt because it is very, very expensive. And one of the things that I wish I knew about even before I started working was compound interest or compound growth, because I would have started saving for my pension much earlier. So I'm basically playing catch up right now, trying to make sure that when my time comes to go on pension, I do not depend on my children. So, there's just one thing that I've learned of late. And I'm also teaching myself quite a bit about investments on an ongoing basis. I read as much as I can about money, so that I make the most of my money, and even when I speak to people about money, at least I'm doing so from an informed position.
Okay. And then just briefly, maybe in a minute or so, take us through, what does your book contain?
The title of the book is From Debt to Riches. I literally start the book with debt and how to keep away from debt. And if you find yourself in a position where you are heavily indebted, what you can do to get rid of that debt. And I speak a lot about the National Credit Act and how it can assist you. The provisions of the Act, for instance, your, debt counselors as provided by the Act. And just to understand for yourself what interest you're paying by type of loan and so forth. And again, I encourage people to buy homes, to save for the vast education of their children, to save for their own pensions. And I speak about garnishee orders. I was quite pleased by the Supreme Court deciding in favor or against garnishee orders. Now, a lot has to be done before you can issue a garnishee order. Not anyone can issue a garnishee order, but the magistrate, for instance. And I also just touch on things that people waste money on. For instance, many people have got credit life. This is the insurance that covers your debt. And I'm saying, why are you covering the debt? Imagine if you're buying 5 to 8 cars in a lifetime, and every time you buy a car, you take credit life. Once that car is paid up, all your insurance that you paid towards that car has been money down the drain. So I also speak about things that, most of us, we don't question things. When we're told you must take this, we don't say why. Is there no other way? So I'm also just trying to get the readers to ask questions so that when they sign, on that contract, they understand what they are doing. So I speak about credit life. I speak about, also there are certain things that you all need to ensure, things that you can't afford to lose. I speak about investments, my passion, that you must all invest. And I also get into a lot about why we need to start investing now for our old age, especially because even myself, I did not understand it. When you started.
Unfortunately, as Phumelele, we are out of time. Thank you very much. Where do people find your book?
It's basically at CNA, Exclusives, Adams, Bargain Books, and you can also get it through Kalahari.
All right. Thank you very much. That was Phumelele Ndumo, the author of Debt to Riches, joining us, sharing her money lessons with us. And that's how we come to the end of the show. Thank you very much for tuning in. Do join me once again next Tuesday or tomorrow afternoon at 5 p.m. on KayaBiz.